She knelt by the market stalls at closing time, not to sell, but to gather what others had thrown away. The market had long since emptied of noise, but the dust lingered. Vendors folded their cloths, coins clinked into pockets, tired feet shuffled away. And there she was, a slight figure, shoulders hunched, moving with the patience of someone unseen. A faded scarf clung to her head, tugged gently by the evening breeze. She bent low, gathering bruised tomatoes, wilted greens, crusted bread, the forgotten leftovers of a day's commerce. Her hands, cracked, calloused, handled the scraps as if they were treasures. No one paused. No one asked. This was routine. Expected. Invisible. She did not beg. She did not cry. She simply gathered. For a breath, she stilled, eyes closed, breathing in dust, indifference, and hunger. Change hovered near, like the first scent of rain before a storm. But she could not see it yet. Fatou rose slowly, her knees stiff from the hours spent crouching. She brushed off the dust clinging to her worn skirt, the fabric so thin it no longer offered any protection from the evening chill. The bruised vegetables and scraps of bread she had gathered were folded carefully into a frayed cloth bag, tucked close to her side. She moved through the thinning crowd with the skill of a shadow, no sudden motions, no unnecessary glances. Her feet, clad in shoes worn thin at the soles, scraped quietly along the stone road. Above, the sky darkened, but she did not hurry. Her humming, soft, broken, wove its way between the clatter of carts and the sharp calls of vendors locking up. It was the only song she owned. Passers-by spared her a glance, quick, dismissive, eyes that flickered with something between pity and annoyance before sliding away. She was familiar to them. Predictable. Easy to ignore. The market lights dimmed behind her as she left the center of town, stepping off the paved road onto the hardened earth path. Ahead, at the very edge of the settlement, sat her home, a leaning structure of patched wood and rusted tin, more hole than shelter. She stopped at the doorway. For a moment, she turned her head, casting one last look over her shoulder at the fading lights of the market. The glow barely reached her here. She lingered, the bag clutched to her chest, breathing in the faint scent of roasted yams and wood smoke that drifted from the wealthier parts of town. Then she stepped inside. The air in the hut was heavy with the smell of damp earth and old cloth. On a worn mat, a small boy lay curled, Mamadou, her son, limbs thin but face peaceful in sleep. Fatou tiptoed across the cracked floor and set the food gently beside him, as though afraid the bread might crumble under her touch. She folded herself down by the doorway, knees pulled to her chest, the night pressing close around her. Above, the stars blinked, small, steady lights against the vast dark. Fatou smiled, a soft, weary smile. She hummed once more, the same broken tune, but this time, halfway through, the melody cracked, and her voice fell silent. The next afternoon, the market throbbed with life. Vendors shouted over each other, thrusting their wares toward passing buyers. Spices perfumed the air, mingling with the sharp tang of sweat and dust. Children zigzagged through the chaos, bare feet slapping against hot stone. Fatou stood near the edge, her cloth bag clutched tightly against her hip. She didn't move. She didn't speak. She waited, as always, for the market's fever to break, for the stalls to begin their slow, tired collapse at day's end. Her gaze drifted over the crowd, past the towers of mangoes, the gleaming fish laid over melting ice. And then she saw him. A boy, no older than 6, sat crumpled beside a fruit stall. His clothes, a crisp cotton shirt and neat shorts, marked him as a child of privilege, but they were stained now, smudged with dust and tears. He wept silently, the kind of crying that has exhausted all hope of comfort. Shoppers streamed past him, glancing, dismissing, forgetting. No one stopped. Fatou's chest tightened. She hesitated, the old instinct to shrink away battling something deeper, heavier. Her feet moved before her fear could catch them. She knelt slowly, so as not to startle him. The boy's basket had tipped, scattering fruit across the stones. An apple, round, red, imperfect, rested near her hand. She picked it up carefully. The fruit sat heavy in her cracked palms, its skin cool against her calloused fingers. She extended it toward the boy, two hands open, offering. He stared at her, his sobs softening into sniffles. A breath passed. Then, with small, uncertain fingers, he reached out. Chief Bayo leaned casually against the sleek body of his polished black car, arms folded across his chest. Gone were the fine embroidered robes he wore at official gatherings. Today, he was dressed in a simple linen shirt, the sleeves rolled past his elbows, and scuffed boots dusted with the day's journey. He watched. Not the clamor of the market or the sparkle of coins changing hands. Not the shouting vendors or the bright fabric snapping in the breeze. No, his gaze was fixed solely on her. The woman who had knelt without hesitation. The woman whose kindness was quiet, almost invisible, the sort of kindness that didn't seek an audience or applause. She moved like a shadow, careful, practiced. Not drawing attention, but somehow holding it. Bayo's thumb brushed the face of his wristwatch, once, twice, a nervous habit he hadn't indulged in for years. He shifted his weight slightly, the leather of his boots creaking against the stone. Something itched at the back of his mind, an old feeling, almost forgotten. Not pity. Not guilt. Curiosity, perhaps. Or maybe it was something heavier, a pull he could not quite name. He had built his fortune here, stone by stone, deal by deal. He knew this market better than anyone, its noise, its rhythm, its hungers. But in all these years, he realized, he had never seen her. Not until now. Fatou disappeared into the crowd, her figure swallowed by the press of bodies and dust. Bayo's eyes followed her until there was nothing left but the faint flutter of her scarf in the wind. He looked away, once, as if to shake himself free from whatever strange thread had tangled itself around him. But his eyes were drawn back, stubborn, insistent. And somewhere deep inside, a decision began to form, silent and invisible, but real. The kind of decision that changes everything. The day slipped past, quiet as breath. Fatou's life unfolded with the same steady rhythm, mornings at the market, evenings spent by the dim glow of a single oil lamp, silent dinners with Mamadou. She gathered what she could, cooked what she found, and hummed the same broken tune. But something had shifted. Invisible. Persistent. She felt it under her skin, and it she couldn't reach. As she walked through the market's narrow lanes, gathering bruised mangoes and wilted cassava leaves, she felt eyes. Not hostile. Not cruel. But heavy, seen. At first, she thought it was her imagination, tricks played by a mind worn thin with years of neglect. But the feeling didn't leave. It lingered. It grew. Late one afternoon, as the market thinned and shadows stretched long across the stalls, she found it. Tucked neatly beneath her usual scatter of discarded produce, an envelope. Plain. Cream-colored. No name. No seal. She glanced around, but the vendors had already turned their backs, busy packing their goods, arguing prices, laughing at jokes she would never be invited to share. Fatou crouched slowly, her fingers hesitant as they closed around the envelope. It was light, almost weightless. Yet it pressed down on her heart with an unbearable heaviness. She turned it over once. Twice. Nothing. Just the envelope. Just the silence. With a breath caught in her throat, she opened it. Inside, a single slip of paper. Simple. Formal. An invitation. A request for her presence at the estate atop the hill, Chief Bayo's home. Fatou's hands trembled as she held the letter, the ink blurring slightly beneath her damp fingertips. She stared at it for a long time, as if expecting the words to rearrange themselves, to reveal a hidden trick. But they didn't. Slowly, very slowly, she pressed the paper to her chest. Closed her eyes. And for the first time in a very long time, allowed herself to imagine a life she had not yet dared to dream. Fatou wore her cleanest dress, a simple blue cotton faded with time, but pressed carefully by her own trembling hands the night before. She had scrubbed her shoes until the worn leather shone, and pulled her scarf tight to tame the stray wisps of hair that never quite stayed in place. Now, she stood before iron gates taller than any tree she had ever known. They stretched up and up, black against the morning sky, crowned with sharp points like silent sentinels. She shifted her weight from one foot to the other, the letter, now soft at the edges, tucked into the pocket of her dress. The gates opened without a sound. Not a creak. Not a groan. Only a smooth, commanding silence. Fatou stepped through. The estate beyond was vast, a sea of white walls and red roofs, the gardens trimmed and polished like jewels. She walked slowly, every step careful, her breath shallow with awe. At the end of the long stone path, Chief Bayo stood waiting. No attendants. No gold chains, no heavy robes. Just him. A simple linen shirt, sleeves rolled up, and a smile, warm, steady, real. He didn't offer his hand. He didn't need to. His voice was low, respectful. "I have a proposition," he said. "A job, housekeeper. Good wages. Meals for you." A pause. "And schooling for your boy." Fatou's hands trembled at her sides. She curled them into fists, gripping the worn fabric of her skirt. This was a gift so large it terrified her, a life she hadn't even dared to imagine, now held out to her like an offering. She bowed her head, uncertain, her throat tight. Chief Bayo spoke again, softer this time. "You have nothing to fear here." Fatou looked up. Met his gaze, steady, kind, unwavering. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, she nodded. Fatou moved slowly through the great hall, her footsteps soft against the polished floors. Each step echoed faintly, swallowed by the sheer space around her. She had never known such quiet, not the restless hush of the market, not the heavy silence of her hut, but a peaceful, dignified quiet, broken only by the distant chirping of birds in the garden beyond. The air smelled of lavender and wood polish, rich and clean, a scent so foreign it made her dizzy. No dust. No sweat. No smoke. As she walked, she brushed her fingers lightly against the velvet curtains lining the windows, thick, dark red, heavy enough to block out the sun. Not everyone welcomed Fatou's quiet rise. Among the house staff, there were whispers, smiles that curled too tightly, glances that slid away too fast. But no gaze was sharper, no silence colder, than Amina's. Amina had served the Bayo family for nearly a decade. She knew the polished corridors by heart, the delicate china by touch. She had folded herself into the rhythm of this place, waiting, patiently, obediently, for the day she might step beyond her station. Respect, trust, advancement, she had built her hopes on slow, careful steps. And now, this woman from the gutters, this beggar of bruised fruit, had stepped into the light she had been reaching for all her life. Without permission. Without the right. It began with a whisper. One evening, just as the sun dipped low and painted the walls of the estate in dusky gold, the head steward made his rounds to lock the silver chest. But something was wrong. A fork. A knife. 2 spoons. Missing. The news spread like wildfire, fanned by eager tongues and watchful eyes. The household buzzed, low voices in corners, sideways glances over shoulders, secrets slithering between cracks. And Amina, always waiting, always patient, stepped forward with a smile sweet as honey and sharp as thorns. "She has known hunger all her life," she said, voice soft, almost regretful. "Perhaps old habits die hard." The words landed heavy. The others shifted uncomfortably, but no one spoke against her. Chief Bayo was called. He entered the room quietly, his face unreadable, his steps deliberate. The noise fell away, leaving only the brittle silence of judgment. His eyes found Fatou. She stood at the edge of the gathering, hands clasped tightly in front of her, the hem of her skirt twisting between nervous fingers. That night, Chief Bayo could not sleep. The estate, usually silent and sure, pressed in around him, walls too close, shadows too loud. The accusations, the doubt, they sat like stones in his chest, refusing to move. He stared at the ceiling, hands folded across his stomach, but rest would not come. Something gnawed at him, small, sharp, relentless. With a sigh, he rose. Pulled on a simple robe. Barefoot, he moved through the dark corridors, the house creaking under its own weight. One by one, he checked the servants' quarters. Neat beds, folded clothes, the scent of soap and wood. Nothing out of place, until he reached the farthest room. Amina's room. The door stood slightly ajar. Bayo pushed it open with 2 fingers, the hinges sighing in protest. The bed was neatly made. The room was spotless, except for a small glint beneath the frame. Bayo knelt, the cool stone biting into his knees. He reached under, and his hand closed around something cold, familiar. Silver. Months slipped by, quiet and steady, like the slow turning of a wheel. Fatou moved through her work with the same grace and patience she always had, but now, the air around her had changed. Where once there had been whispers, there was now respect. Where once glances slid away, there were now nods, small smiles, quiet acknowledgments. She was no longer invisible. Mamadou, too, bloomed like a long-hidden flower finding the sun. His uniform grew a little snug around the shoulders, his legs stretched longer each season. He came home clutching certificates, his shy smile widening each time Fatou pinned another to the wall beside his bed. He read aloud now, books filled with stories of distant places, of dreams Fatou herself was only just learning to believe could be real. One evening, as the last light faded and the crickets began their quiet chorus, Chief Bayo sent for them. But this time, not to serve. This time, to sit. The dining room, grand and gleaming, was softened by the glow of oil lamps and the clatter of simple plates. No gold, no heavy silks, just a table set with warmth and quiet honor. Fatou and Mamadou sat side by side among Bayo's family, not guests of charity, but guests of belonging. The meal was hearty, roasted yams, tender goat stew, fresh fruits sweet and dripping. Fatou laughed, truly laughed, at something one of Bayo's daughters said. The sound startled even herself, light and clear and unfamiliar. Later, after the plates had been cleared and the house had settled into the deep hush of night, Fatou sat on the veranda. Mamadou was curled beside her, his head resting against her arm, already slipping into sleep. Above them, the stars blinked awake, one by one, soft lanterns strung across the velvet dark. Fatou tilted her head back, breathing in the cool night air. Kindness, like crumbs, often goes unnoticed. It doesn't boast. It doesn't shout. It moves quietly, a hand extended, a smile offered, a simple apple returned to a child's grasp. But it is these small acts, unseen by many, that nourish the soul. It is kindness that softens the hardest hearts, that reaches where power and wealth cannot. It is kindness that plants seeds in soil we thought barren, seeds that, in time, grow into something stronger than pride, richer than gold. Remember, it is not the wealth you hold, nor the title you wear, that defines your true worth. It is the hand you offer. It is the heart you open. It is the quiet choice to lift another, even when no one is watching.